This is a moment that asks more of us. A moment to show up for women's rights and gender justice. In April, thousands of changemakers will meet in Narrm, Australia, across movements, sectors, and generations. This is Women Deliver 2026. A global feminist conference focused on women's rights and building a more just and equitable world, where ideas are tested, where connections are formed, where commitments take shape. From climate to conflict, to bodily autonomy, care, and power, the questions before us are urgent. Women Deliver 2026 brings us together to work through what comes next. Because this moment calls for more than conversation. It calls for courage. It calls for responsibility. It calls for collective action. Change calls us here.
Welcome, everyone, and thank you for making time to join us this evening. I'm Julie Riley. I'm the CEO of Australians Investing in Women, and we work to strengthen society by growing more and more impactful investments in women and girls that drive greater gender equality. In the spirit of reconciliation, I want to begin tonight by acknowledging the traditional custodians of the land that our team is meeting on here in Narrm, the Wurundjeri people of the Kulin Nation, and I pay my respects to elders past and present and to the traditional custodians all around the lands that everyone is joining from tonight. I particularly want to honour the women, First Nations women, who we know are those who are really leading change in their communities. It had been our hope that the wonderful Haussegger AM would be here tonight to welcome you officially. Tanya has agreed to be an Australians Investing in Women ambassador, and she was very sorry not to be able to make it. She's in Canberra, busy in board meetings, and sends her regards to everyone. So we haven't announced that news publicly, but I'm delighted to share that with you tonight. So we've got speakers joining us from all around many locations tonight, from Canberra, Melbourne, Hobart, the UK, Fiji, and Pakistan, and obviously many people from around Australia. So let's get started. To set the scene for tonight's discussion, we're very fortunate to have with us the wonderful Virginia Haussegger. Now, we're not going to be doing detailed bios and introductions. You've been sent all of that, and many people here will be well known to you. But I'm confident that many of you will know Virginia from her broadcast career and her career as a print journalist and a social commentator, and many, many decades of gender equality advocacy, which we thank you for, Virginia. Virginia's also been recently appointed as president of the Australian Council for International Development, ACFID. But she's also a very accomplished author, and I'm going to just give a little plug, if I may, to this latest book that Virginia has released that is just so absolutely in sync with our work, and I'm going to put it beside our own little advocacy kit. We'll share links to both of those publications when we send our follow-up communications to you. So it's a very galvanising read, Virginia. It's actually become my go-to gift for those who would like a bit of feminist history and inspiration. So can I pass over to you to set the scene for us about where we are at when it comes to gender equality?
Sure. Thank you, Julie, and thank you for that lovely warm intro and for sharing the book. And look, it's funny, since the recent publication of that book, I have lost count of the number of male journalists who've asked me, gender equality, aren't we there yet? If you want to understand the state of the world in 2026, don't start with stock markets or news reports, start with women. The status of women and girls is a global barometer of stability, sustainability, and future growth. And right now, unfortunately, that barometer is in the red danger zone. With increasing geopolitical turbulence, a collapse in the rule of law, a sharp rise in authoritarian rule, theocracies and fundamentalist regimes, and with 59 active conflicts raging around the globe right now, the freedoms and rights of women are under unprecedented threat. When extremists gain ground, the first laws they pass are about women. Within their first months of power in 2021, the Taliban passed over 100 decrees restricting the rights of women, including banning them from work and study. And right now, 5 years later, 15 million females in Afghanistan remain confined to their homes. On his first day back in office, President Trump signed an executive order titled Defending Women from Gender Ideology Extremism. It created a new legal definition of woman and a ban on gender fluidity. When conflict erupts, it's women's bodies that become battlefields. And when climate disasters strike, it's girls who leave school first. And when democracies polarize, reproductive rights and gender protections are the first casualties. And over the past decade, the speed of backsliding has been truly disorienting. We're at a critical point in history in which the pushback against women is far from subtle. It's overt, it's well-funded, it's strategic, and it's ideological. The UN Secretary General's blunt on this. Antonio Guterres says, instead of mainstreaming equal rights, we are witnessing the mainstreaming of misogyny. And he says, we can't stand back as progress is reversed. We must fight back. So when it comes to strengthening gender equality, we're not starting from scratch. Over the past 30 years, the world built a framework for women's equality from the Beijing Platform for Action, and mostly it has worked. Progress has been real, demonstrable, and measurable, but progress is never permanent. And history tells us that advances for women are often followed by organised resistance. Gains that look embedded remain fragile. So the question in 2026 isn't, have we achieved something? Of course we have. The question is whether we intend to protect it and accelerate it in a much more volatile world. The World Economic Forum says we've closed about 68% of the global gender gap. At the current pace, gender parity will take 123 years, over a century. And in our region, Eastern Asia and the Pacific, the outlook is even worse. It'll take 179 years. No nation has achieved gender equality. And according to UN Women, none will meet the SDG 5 gender equality target set for 2030. And yet, despite that, according to last year's Global Attitude Survey, which Julia may speak to a little bit later, 50% of people around the globe believe that when it comes to giving women equal rights with men, things have gone far enough in my country. The younger men are, the more they agree with that statement. Globally, 57% of Gen Z males believe the promotion of gender equality results in discrimination against men. Anger at women's progress is becoming increasingly institutionalised through the manosphere. The current level of online violence, hatred and abuse directed at women it was just unimaginable even a decade ago. The Beijing Platform for Action didn't give us a framework to battle this form of modern day war on women. Back on ground war, currently 676 million women and girls live in or near deadly armed conflict zones somewhere around the world. It's nearly 17% of the global female population facing daily threats of displacement, physical violence, food shortage, lack of healthcare, disrupted education. And everywhere, climate shocks are compounding vulnerability. The sudden closure of US aid last year, along with recent aid cuts by the UK, France, Germany, and other European donors and UN agencies, is collectively a huge disruptor to progressing gender equality. When aid budgets get cut, women and girls don't just lose programs, they lose services, safety, and choices. US aid cuts have hit sexual and reproductive health pipelines fast and hard. Contracts and grants have been terminated at scale, including family planning. Countless clinics have closed and contraceptive supply chains broken around the world. Over 100,000 UNFPA supported health facilities and mobile teams have shut down and forced more than 250 safe places for women and girls to close. When funding disappears, women's bodily autonomy disappears with it. Each year, about 12 million girls worldwide marry before they're 18. Now, when you think about it, that's almost one girl every 2 seconds being married. Around 4 million of them are under 15. So what about women and political power? Well, among the 193 UN member states, only 15 nations currently have a woman at the helm of government. Globally, women hold about 27% of parliamentary seats. In parts of the Pacific, political representation is among the lowest in the world, and rates of violence against women are among the highest. And Virisila will speak on the Pacific region shortly. Globally, 1 in 3 women have experienced physical and/or sexual violence, and in Australia, that's 1 in 4. And for Indigenous women, the data is even worse as they face the compounding effect of intersectional gender inequality. Our Indigenous women have an 8 to 10 year shorter life expectancy than non-Indigenous women in Australia, and they are 21 times more likely to be in prison. So after all the doom and gloom, where's the hope? Well, despite the headwinds, there are powerful tailwinds. Women's movements are stronger, younger, and more networked than ever and more energised, and you're going to hear more about that tonight. In closing, I'll leave you with this thought. Gender equality, it doesn't drift forward on goodwill. It advances when people with influence decide it's non-negotiable. And in 2026, the pressure is real. Conflict, extremism, global misogyny, funding cuts, polarisation. The question isn't whether the situation's too complex, it's whether or not we have the resolve to fight it. Thank you, and I'll leave it there. Back to you, Julie.
Well, Virginia, I'm taking a very deep breath. Thank you for that incredibly comprehensive and rather sobering account of where we're at, but also for, I think, the clarion call for action. So on that note, I thank you most sincerely, not just for tonight, but as I mentioned earlier, for the many, many decades of advocacy that you have done very well. So I'd like now to warmly welcome the Chair of Australians Investing in Women, Cathy Scalzo, and our wonderful former Prime Minister, who I just call a global rock star, because that's really what you are, Julia, who's speaking to us tonight as a Women Deliver Ambassador, the Honourable Julia Gillard AC. I'm doing in my heart thunderous applause. Cathy and Julia will be in conversation for about 20 minutes, followed by some words from Virisila from the Pacific, and then we'll go to Dr. Maliha Khan, who's the CEO of Women Deliver. So you've just got the most incredible lineup tonight to learn more about what this Women Deliver is all about and why you should be part of it. We'll then open up for questions a little bit later. But in the meantime, if you've got questions, feel free to put them in the chat or make a note of them so when we open up, and please let us know who you'd like to answer the question. But on that note, thank you so much, Julia, for getting up early in the freezing cold in London and joining us. I'll hand over to you, Cathy.
Thank you so much, Julie. Julia, a very warm welcome on behalf of the philanthropic community in Australia. Thank you so much for agreeing to join us this evening. It's an absolute honour to have you. It's a delight to have you. And we really want to focus this conversation on helping the philanthropic community understand why they should engage with Women Deliver and how they can go about that in a way that has impact beyond the event itself. So that's sort of how we're going to frame the conversation that you and I are going to have. We're really lucky to have some people with us tonight that have experience of Women Deliver, who've attended a conference. But for lots of our attendees tonight, Women Deliver is something very new and not something they know a great deal about. So it'd be great if you could share some of the history, the goals of Women Deliver, and help us understand why someone like you, who has so many responsibilities, so many opportunities, has chosen to be an ambassador for Women Deliver in 2026.
Well, Kathy, thank you for the opportunity for this conversation, and a huge thanks to Julie and her team too. I have attended Women Deliver conferences, so I can give eyewitness accounts, but let me just chart the history first. Women Deliver hails from 2007, when people initially gathered in Washington to say it is unacceptable that 500,000 women globally die each year as a result of maternal mortality. And the conference has then gone on in many locations since. I personally attended the conference that was held in Copenhagen. I attended the one in Vancouver. Unfortunately, I was unable to attend the last one in Kigali. It's also been in Kuala Lumpur, all over the world. And Women Deliver has grown in its mission. So now, beyond the vital issue of maternal mortality, it is now talking about the full gamut of issues, about the ability of women and girls to control their own bodies and to control their own lives, everything that they need to see to experience a gender equal world. And it's in that spirit of breadth and meeting the current moment that Women Deliver is now coming to Melbourne. And of course, this is a time where we've just heard from Virginia so powerfully that women's rights are under attack in many ways around the world. And so it is vital that we use this ability to come together in large numbers, thousands of women coming together, to stocktake where we are, to work out what we need to do next to meet this moment and to keep pushing for change.
And just in responding to that, Julia, would it be right to say that it's not just a series of presentations? What you're describing is actually a coming together, a kind of rolling up the sleeves element as well that goes on at Women Deliver.
Yes, absolutely. It's not a talk fest, to use the often used parlance, though I'm always a little bit reluctant around the talk fest, because at the end of the day, human beings have always solved problems by getting together and talking about them. So talking is valuable, but talking needs to be followed by action. And so the conference is very focused on bringing people together, making breakthroughs, and then agreeing programs of action and change. People can come and make pledges, commitments about what they're going to do. And of course, people can forge new connections, create new working groups, new pathways to deliver change. And if I can just say something with the sense of urgency that we should be approaching this moment, we've got to recognise that for those of us who have been at the task of gender equality advocacy for decades, and I'd certainly put myself in that category, we aren't winning. We do need to come together and say, why is it that community attitudes, and Virginia has referred to polling undertaken by the Global Institute for Women's Leadership, which I chair, why is it that community attitudes are going backwards on gender equality? What can we do to build more community support? What narrative shifts do we need to see to harness community energy and action? And how should that action best be delivered? And they're a complex set of questions that no one will solve alone, will only solve together.
And actually, one of the really distinguishing features of Women Deliver is the fact that it brings together a whole series of actors that are necessary for that kind of change. So governments, civil society, youth leaders, global organisations. And in that sense, if we're thinking about philanthropy and that coming together that looks like that, what are some of the opportunities for philanthropy to collaborate and play a role in amplifying the impact of that coming together of all those organisations and all those players?
Thanks, Kathy. I think this is really a unique moment for philanthropy generally, but particularly for Australian philanthropy. As you know, I spend much of each year in London. I'm in London now, and the most commonly held refrain I hear in London when I talk about Australia is, "It's so far." It's like, oh, you know, we do find it hard because of the perception of distance, and I guess the reality of distance. We do find it hard to get the world to come to Australia, but the world is coming to Australia in Women Deliver. And so I think that gives philanthropy generally, but particularly Australian philanthropy, a unique opportunity to forge new connections and to get new ideas. And I sense in Australian philanthropy, there's not an absence of will, but there's often a nervousness, a hesitancy, an unwillingness to make big bets, a focus on pilots rather than, bigger interventions. And I'm hoping that through the new knowledge, new connections, and new agenda for action that will come out of Women Deliver, we can also get a new approach by Australian philanthropy to investing bigger and better in women and girls and gender equality. And when I say the world is coming to Australia, one of the strengths of Women Deliver, and I've seen this with my own eyes at earlier conferences, is it focuses on bringing to the fore the voices who normally don't get heard, tragically don't get heard in global events. So, I've been to the UN, the G20, to lots of global events, and unless you do what Women Deliver does and make special efforts, you will not hear the voices of the most marginalised women. You will not hear the voices of Indigenous women. You will not hear the voices of Pacific Island women, and Women Deliver will be foregrounding those voices. So once again, for philanthropy, particularly Australian philanthropy, that I think will give new insights, which would be quite hard for Australian philanthropy to curate their way into just acting on their own.
I think that's a really important thing for us to reflect on, because we're often called to think about lived experience as part of the way we approach a problem and engage around a problem, but it's not always easy, as you say, to get that kind of access and to be invited in a way, and to be able to participate and allow all those voices to be heard, and Pacifica voices, global voices, and First Nations voices as well. You've, as well as encouraging us to think about bold and big bets and the courage that Virginia also alluded to, you've talked about a whole range of different things with philanthropy. You've talked about thinking about long-term systemic investment, evidence-based investment. Are these the kinds of things that we will be able to engage with through Women Deliver? And what kind of lasting change do you think we can be thinking about from a conference like this? And I think both globally, Julia, which you've got very much an ability to see, but also locally.
Yeah, I think for philanthropy, there are a series of challenges, and I've spoken about this publicly. I spend a lot of my current time in a philanthropic endeavour. I'm actually sitting in the offices of the Wellcome Trust, one of the world's biggest philanthropic organisations focused on health and medical research. And I know from my own work chairing the board of this organisation that it's easy to settle into a comfort zone. It would be easy for us to say, well, health and medical research, what we'll do is we'll put out periodic calls and researchers will come forward with good ideas, and maybe we'll put, a couple of $1 million there and a couple of $1 million there. All of that is an easy comfort zone. And you'll lapse into that unless periodically you really shake yourself up and say, no, what are the big challenges and where should we put big bets? And we've done that in the context of health and medical research at Wellcome. And I do think philanthropy generally needs to do that. This is not a time for incrementalism. The forces against us are not engaged in incrementalism. They're trying to take bounding leaps as they push back gender equality and women's rights. And so we've got to find the courage to take bounding leaps as well. And I know that getting in the zone to do that requires philanthropists to do a lot of thinking, to get a lot of information, a lot of insight, to have a lot of discussions with their own teams, but also with each other. And Women Deliver will enable philanthropy to do that. There will be times when philanthropists can talk to each other. There will be times when you can engage with women activists across a broad range of causes. There will be the central theme of the event where there are plenaries that are really working through some of the hardest and knottiest issues we've got to unravel if we're really going to make the progress that we want to see. And so I think it's an environment that will really catalyse people's creativity and imaginations, and I hope also strengthen their courage to take the big bets that we need. I know people often go to a lot of philanthropic conferences. There's a lively conference circuit now in philanthropy, but it's not often that you get to have the discussions philanthropy needs to have, but also be in an environment with thousands of others from right around the world representing all sorts of causes, issues and perspectives, and engage directly with them as well.
It's such an opportunity, and usually you'd have to travel an incredible distance to engage with what you're describing, and we're very, very fortunate that we are hosting it. That point you make around collaboration and the need to be organised and galvanised in response to what is a very organised series of activities against gender equality that Virginia described so well, that's another really important strand of this, because it provides, doesn't it, an opportunity for philanthropy to set aside some of what they might do in the day by day and come together in a space where they can really bring thinking, but do it collaboratively, because none of this is going to be able to be worked on in silos.
Yeah, I think working in silos is certainly an enemy of the kind of depth of change that we need to see. And I know that it's easy for the terminology big bets to trip off my tongue, but often for many philanthropic organisations to make a big bet would have to be done in collaboration with a series of other funders. And so being together, I think, can forge those connections and enable people to cluster behind the big bets that do need to be made. And I do get the sense, when I'm back in Australia, I do often talk to philanthropic organisations, to philanthropists, and I think there is a sense of searching. People have been really taken aback by how quickly our world has changed. I think Virginia painted that picture very graphically. I mean, even if I look back at my time in government, it was full of challenges and stresses and strains. But when I look at the geopolitics of the era, I mean, my counterpart was President Obama. I mean, looking back on those days now, we do that with a sort of wistful, almost tear in our eye. Wouldn't we still love to see that kind of steady leadership in the world that President Obama provided? But that's not the age we live in. We live in an age where so-called populism is on the rise, where women's rights are under attack, where philanthropy itself is often sneered at, where there are attempts to control and to bully philanthropy. And we do need to find the moments, the venues, the opportunities to come together and to talk all of this through. And I think people are anxious, perplexed, often hesitant because of the big changes that we're seeing in the world. And I feel those emotions myself, but we best overcome those emotions by sitting together and working the challenges through.
Yeah, that's so beautifully put. One of the things that we've been thinking about at Australians Investing in Women, we think about all the time, is the way that we need to think about gender as it impacts other significant problems. And there are many philanthropists that are with us today who do focus very deeply on gender equality, but for some that's not their main area of focus. Climate is an excellent example. We have lots of people joining us that fund climate. And if I'm a climate philanthropist, why might I be thinking that this is a good opportunity for me, Women Deliver, something I should engage with? What should I be thinking about and why? Why would I go along?
Absolutely. I think Virginia has already painted this picture for us, but to very much reinforce it, whatever issue people are focused on as a philanthropist, and of course people have to focus, if you look at it in depth, you will find that there is a gender dynamic, and women are often the ones who are most impacted by the thing that you're concerned about and at the forefront of being agents of change. And if we look at climate specifically, that is certainly true. All of the statistics are telling us that the people who are most at risk as climate changes people's homelands and habitats, most at risk of being thrown into poverty, displaced, working in extreme heat, bearing the health consequences, it's women and girls. In fact, this is one of the things we study here at the Wellcome Trust, the impact of extreme heat on things like maternal mortality, which takes us right back to the origins of Women Deliver. And if you're interested in poverty eradication, it takes you to women and girls. The percentage of people living in poverty, disproportionately women and girls. You know, if you're interested in education and you take the global view, the most likely to be missing out on school education, it's girls. We know that powerfully from Malala and others. And the list just goes on and on. So whatever topic you have picked as the main vehicle for your philanthropy, the gender lens, I think, is vital to understanding it and being in contact with the women's organisations that are working on that topic too will accelerate your mission for change.
And in that we would expect that there will be lots of women's organisations present, activists and others who specifically work on some of those different pillars that you've identified. Yeah.
I would be astonished if there's a philanthropist who is working on something who doesn't find a lively community at Women Deliver working on exactly the same issue. I mean, this is a conference that brings together thousands. You know, I've been Copenhagen, Vancouver, from memory, Copenhagen was 5,000 to 6,000 women. I think Vancouver was 8,000 women. These are big events, Women Deliver. It will be a big event in Melbourne, and it will have people whose issues and topics match what philanthropists in Australia are very concerned about.
Thank you so much, Julia, for all those observations. I think it's, for me at least, and I'm sure for others, it helps to sort of paint a picture of what we might expect and what we might learn, how we might be stimulated. Particularly, I think this idea that we're going to be engaging with a very global community as well as local community and coming together and collaborating at a time when that is more needed than ever. If there's anything else you want to share with us about Women Deliver, a kind of final thought that we should take with us as we prepare, it's an incredible opportunity. It might feel slightly overwhelming that 8,000 women descending on Melbourne is an incredibly exciting but also somewhat daunting prospect, trying to navigate that. So have you got any final thoughts for us on how we can navigate it?
Well, there will be the sort of interactive conference program, which will enable you to navigate through on the themes that you want to be involved in and the sessions that you want to go to. But what I've always found with Women Deliver, it's all of the formal things that you put yourself into, and I'm going to be there personally and in a range of sessions and formal events. But when you've got that much buzz and that much activity, the opportunity to make your own connections, to see the people that you want to see alongside the formal program, and to meet people that you've never been in contact with before, all of that organic sort of finding each other that happens, it adds to the joy of it alongside the formal program. So yes, numbers can sound daunting, but my experience of Women Deliver is it's not daunting, it's energising for so many women to be in the same place at the same time.
Thank you. Hopefully the next time some of us will see you, we'll be there. So thank you so much. I'm going to pass back to Julie.
Yeah, thank you. Thank you both so much. It is an incredible honour to have you speak so directly to this opportunity and to the issue, Julia, and to have Cathy so beautifully extract those pearls of wisdom. So thank you. We're very, very grateful. And I'm a little surprised there's not more curiosity in the chat. So I'm really going to be asking. I see lots of beautiful applause and hearts and love coming your way, but I will encourage people to ask some questions or make some comments. But we want now to take this conversation from the global to the regional. And I would like to invite, and again, I won't go into a long introduction, but I'd like to invite Virisila Baudromo, I hope I've said that beautifully, I've only ever called you Viri, to share with us the perspective of the Oceanic Pacific. And perhaps, Viri, you wear many hats, but I think in this particular instance, you're really engaged at the highest level in some global Pacific networks. You're part of the Resourceful Collective, that is the Urgent Action Fund, the Pacific Feminist Fund, and the International Women's Development Agency in Australia. And you're basically a font of much wisdom. So if I could hand over to you to just share your perspective before we go to Maliha.
Vinaka, Julie, Bula Vinaka, and thank you everyone for engaging in this conversation. I'm speaking to you from Suva, Fiji, one of the 24 countries spread across the vast Pacific Ocean we share. As outlined by our previous speakers, we're witnessing significant global shifts. While they may seem like over there issues, the trickle-down effect on our region is real and accelerating. Women Deliver 2026 is more than just a global feminist conference. It's bringing together policymaker, philanthropic capital, feminist movements, and civil society to our shores at a moment when the right conversations could catalyze exponential impact. For the first time, it'll be co-hosted with the Pacific, making it a pivotal moment for Australia, which in many ways is holding the line on gender equality policy. Together, this is Oceania stepping forward, not at the margins of global debate, but helping to lead and shape the future of gender and climate justice. For the Pacific, we are not only at the front lines of the climate crisis, with some of our islands facing existential threat, but we are also on the front lines of a gender crisis. We have some of the world's worst rates of gender-based violence. 2 in 3 women experience it. 1 in 3 of us will be killed by it. Compounding this, we have some of the lowest levels of political representation of women in the world. The funding realities are stark. In 2017, less than 0.2% of all aid to the Pacific went to women's organizations led by people of and based in this region. Of those organizations, only 16% received funding lasting more than 2 years, undermining long-term planning. Funding for Pacific women's empowerment has stagnated since 2012, even as needs have risen through a global pandemic and the climate crisis. The effects of global funding cuts are being felt. many organizations are preparing to cut their budgets by 40% by this year, while others are closing their doors for good. Excusing the pun, it is a perfect storm. The effects of climate change are deeply gendered, and these crises compound one another. And yet, despite these realities, Pacific women are leading. At the recent international legal proceedings on climate change at the International Court of Justice, 7 of the 13 Pacific delegations were represented by women, with 3 countries sending all female delegations. Despite disproportionate impacts, women and girls are driving climate solutions, shaping legal arguments, and leading community resilience. What they lack is not leadership, it is sustained resourcing. I'd love to color this in more, but time is short. So let's talk about Women Deliver and why it should matter to you, Australian philanthropy. For many, the question may be where to channel resources for the greatest impact. Of course, I'd be eager to talk about supporting the Urgent Action Fund Asia and the Pacific and the Resourceful Collective, which are critical connectors to moving funding to change makers across the Pacific. But this moment calls for more than moving resources. It calls on us to show up, collaborate, and shape the future together. It's also about Australia's current leadership in gender equality policy, the largest generational wealth transfer in its history, a shifting global funding landscape, and spotlighting and supporting our region on the front lines of gender and climate justice. With the right conversations, collaboration, inspiration, and learning at the global conversation on our shores, the potential is exponential. From a regional perspective, by attending Women Deliver, you can, 1, elevate the spotlight on our shared region, highlighting the lessons emerging from collaborations between Australia and the Pacific, as well as the change that you'll see at the nexus of gender equality and climate crisis. Ground these conversations in the generational knowledge and leadership of the First Nations and Indigenous leaders across Australia and the Pacific. 2, support power shifting in action. This is a rare moment of shared agenda setting between a Western country and small island developing states in the global South. The agenda and solutions are being formed by communities with lived realities, Indigenous perspectives, and more. This is significant not only in symbolism, but actively breaking down the silos. 3, strengthen regional connectivity as we prepare to face the challenges. Come, listen, learn, talk, talanoa. We are stronger together. Change is coming. The question is, will we shape it together? Thank you, Julie.
Viri, thank you. And I am just so very conscious of what a unique opportunity this is for our, really our closest neighbours, women and girls in the Oceanic Pacific, that we know, well, we talk about often don't get the attention, the global attention that they really deserve. And we really look forward to elevating those issues and understanding them, not just, as you say, in the problems that are stark and clear, but in actually how we can work together to address them. So thank you so much. I'm going to encourage people to put their questions in the chat if they have any, because we will open up for questions shortly. But after Viri's very powerful words, and actually all of the powerful speakers we've had, I want now to hand to Dr. Maliha Khan, who has the very big job of bringing this global phenomenon to Narrm, to Melbourne. And Maliha, it's not our first conversation, but for many people here, they won't necessarily have met you before and had the chance to hear from you. So thank you for making the time to do that from Pakistan. And we'll hand over to you to really take us perhaps beyond some of the really powerful selling points of why we want to be involved, and just share perhaps some of the detail that you can share about speakers and program and timelines. Thank
Absolutely. And thank you, Julie, and Australia Investing in Women organizing this and for the amazing speakers before. They really represent, why we're coming to Narrm and what we're trying to do. The Australian, sort of official government, the Victorian government, the Pacific Island feminists who've been such a driving force in all of this, and of course also the Australian civil society and philanthropy, which have really welcomed us, in fact, compelled us to make sure that this program gets pulled off. So let me just get down a little bit into the nitty-gritties of how do you engage. Like any big global space, we've got a variety of ways that you can curate it for yourself. So we've got everything from pre-conferences to side events to physical hubs and spaces. And then, of course, the opening ceremony, the closing ceremony, and the plenaries. The opening and closing ceremony are the very curated spaces. We haven't announced it yet, but I think I can go ahead and say it, that the opening will be the Governor General of Australia alongside with the Prime Minister from one of the Prime Ministers from the Pacific Island states and a number of other dignitaries, and of course Julia Gillard herself. So that's the more like formal curated space. But then we also have plenaries. We have the pre-conferences. There are 70. There's over 100 concurrent sessions on any number of themes. Some of the things that people can look forward to, because this was asked of Julia, is everything in terms of topics that you could possibly imagine. If you're interested in menstrual health and hygiene, we have a number of partners who are coming and doing an amazing amount of discussions, from that to economic empowerment, to political engagement, to the digital space and how do we prevent violence there. A tremendous amount of programming on climate, on the global health and how do we address the global health system, gender-based violence, how do we protect and preserve democracies, and pretty much anything and everything in between that you can think of that's even remotely tangentially related to gender. We have people who are presenting there. Specifically on philanthropy, some of the ways that people can engage is we have an amazing group that consists of 32 institutions and organizations that's working on what they're calling financing our future. How do we finance and support this process towards gender equality? They're curated 32 concurrent sessions that are being presented from the full spectrum of how do we finance our future, from ODA to private sector to innovative financing to philanthropy. And that's looking at all sorts of things from models to good examples to future forecasting and where do we need to go to how do we do it for very, very specific topics. So I'm sure you can find something of interest there. In addition to that, what would be open to philanthropists is our philanthropy pre-conference, which is being organized by some of our partners. This is a closed door session that is open only to philanthropists. This could be high net worth individuals, this could be family offices, and this could be some of the biggest foundations that are there. In fact, most of the biggest foundations are actually coming and sending very high level representation. And it's a closed door, 1.5 day, Sunday, all day, Monday morning session that is taking some very deep dives into issues that are most concerned to philanthropy. So I'll stop there because I know there might be lots and lots of other questions and there's lots of other discussions we could be having. But needless to say, you can do everything from sitting and immersing yourself for 4 days just on the question of philanthropy, or you can become adventurous and go out and touch upon 100 different topics that you didn't even think that there was issues around. The one thing I would encourage everybody to do is have your bilateral meetings, do your networking, just sit and listen and feel the solidarity, but also take the opportunity to just turn around and talk to the person next to you. Because at Women Deliver, you have no idea whether you're going to encounter a minister or a grassroots activist, and they all have amazing things to say.
Maliha, thank you. I'm going to keep you front and center there. We've got a couple of questions, and thank you for these questions that are coming in. I'm going to go first to a question from Minal from YGAP. She's thanking you very much and saying that you've talked about Women Deliver being an opportunity to go beyond a talk fest. And I wonder if you could perhaps share out of previous Women Deliver events, what sort of action, particularly around pledges and really evidence of growing investment, have been made that sparked the change post-summit?
Yeah, there's been, Women Deliver is not a commitment-making space. There are some spaces where everyone who comes has to make a commitment, but it is a huge platform, and so lots of governments, lots of donors, lots of foundations take this opportunity to make announcements of commitments they are making towards, certain issues, causes, etc. So just as an example, Women Deliver was a catalyst for the Vancouver conference, and Julia was there, so she bears, and I'm sure some other people were there too. To that the civil society of Canada took to push the Canadian government to make the tremendous commitments they made of financing gender equality writ large, particularly some of the neglected areas. This is where the Equality Fund started and was announced. This is where the commitments of the government were made. At the last conference, we had a lot of commitments made, particularly in the African context, by the African Development Bank, by the AU, and by a number of donors, with recommitments from Canada, from the Dutch, from the Swedes, etc., on specific issues. So there are lots of opportunities for commitments. But more than that, there's also opportunities to forge ways forward on issues. Lots of people use that. And in fact, given the conversations we're just having now on the current context, one of the things we are trying to do is also create a specific political statement that comes out of Women Deliver about the way forward, and open up space for people not just to make financial commitments, but to make action commitments for the transformation of the sector, and for us to be able to hold on to the things that are very, very important, so that we don't give up on our key principles and we're able to forge the way forward. I loved what was said by one of the earlier speakers. Change is coming. Very said that, it's just, are we going to shape it? And so we want to create the spaces at Women Deliver where we can have those conversations of how we collectively are going to shape the future.
Maliha, thank you. And I know that it is really in the human connection and the learning and those kind of shared ambitions that Women Deliver brings so much power. Can you just share perhaps some of the names for people who haven't gone onto your website or looked? I know you've got some high-level names that people might want to know are coming. If you just want to give us the sort of some top billing, and then I've got some other questions. Thanks.
Well, in addition to, and I'll repeat, Julia Gillard being there, we also have another political leader from the region who's very, very dear to me, which is Helen Clark. She's served for 9 years on Women Deliver's board, and she will be there. Jacinda Ardern is coming, and I shared with a smaller group. This is not public yet, but we are going to have some very high level representation from the Australian government, including the Governor General, who will be coming also. And we'll have any number, all sorts of other people. Please look at the website. Every day we're getting confirmations, official confirmations from speakers, and we're putting them out there. And we're really excited about the really great lineup we're going to get.
Maliha, thank you. And I know there's a question in the chat from Jeremy Meltzer, who's got a fantastic initiative called I equals change. But I think you've probably addressed that in terms of leading to funding pledges and commitments. So Jeremy, if you'll forgive me, we'll move to a question that Trish Gray has for Viri. And basically she's saying, when it comes to the Pacific, what big bets would you nominate for philanthropic organisations to consider, and why? Climate change might seem the obvious one, but are there other issues that are key to consider and put resources behind?
I definitely think that supporting feminist organizations and feminist movements in the Pacific is extremely key. As I said before, they're leading the change in the Pacific. There are many Pacific based organizations led by feminists like the Fiji Women's Rights Movement. There are funds in the Pacific that are led by feminists like the Pacific Feminist Fund, who is a co-partner with us on Resourceful. There's also Australian-based organizations that are doing amazing work. And the reason why I'm naming these organizations, because for a lot of these women and girls who are working on the front lines, if you want them to focus on just their work and not just keep on reporting, it's really important to have these intermediaries to help them move the resources and distribute resources to them, so those on the front lines can do the work. Because often that's what we're challenged by in the Pacific. We're expected to fix the problem and at the same time report back to donors. So supporting that ecosystem is a critical part of that big bet, and not just kind of overwhelming organizations. So I would strongly recommend that supporting feminist movements is key.
Fantastic. Thank you, Viri. And I know that we've only got 5 or 6 minutes left, and there are 2 people I want to call on. The first is Jo Kirk, who is another fabulous woman out of South Australia. I don't know what that state has, Julia, in the water, but we keep seeing brilliant women come from there. And Jo is a brilliant philanthropist, a dear friend. She supports Australians investing in women. And she went to Kigali last year. So I think often the peer-to-peer relationship is helpful. Jo, do you mind just sharing just for a minute what it is you think people would get from the experience?
Sure. Thanks so much, Julie. As you just mentioned, I was lucky enough to go to Kigali in 2023, and that was my first Women Deliver. And I was really glad that I made the journey. It was a long way, and so I could appreciate for other people coming to Australia, it's a long way for people to come to us. But as a feminist funder, I found it a really valuable experience, and I think others have mentioned how you were able to get a global perspective about the current situation, but also that local perspective as well, and to connect over that. So I think one of the great things was hearing the voices of women, girls, and gender diverse people from all over the world. And in particular, I really think part of it that resonated with me was the real commitment Women Deliver has to having young people's voices at the conference. And it made a real difference from my experience, because I feel like often young people have a real sense of urgency and they're activated, and it really gave a different energy. It wasn't like a standard conference. There was lots of really amazing things that happened, outside of those formal things that Julia was talking about. So if I can just relay a little bit, during the break time, sometimes there would be like spontaneous singing and dancing and people sharing their culture. There was like sort of creative spaces where people were able to do this. And it gave something to the conference that was more than a conference. And I think that also helps you with connections and relationships. So I was able to build these connections with other funders, with people working at the grassroots, with activists, with government representatives, with change makers. And it was a really deep insight into what people are doing globally as well as locally. So they also had opportunity for us to meet as a region, which I found really great, to spend time with other people from the Oceanic Pacific region and talk about the issues that were important to us. At times too, I have to say that it was, of course, it was political, it was challenging, it was heartbreaking. But as I just mentioned, there was a lot of joy as well, because I felt like there was people, no matter what issue they were passionate about, we were working together to build a movement. Another great highlight for me was being able to be in the room with organisations that I'd funded and to be there as their supporter and their champion and their cheerleader. So I got to do that with IWDA, which was just great to see them on the global stage. And as other people said, just one more thing. I just say,
please.
I really want to say it was so energizing. It was overwhelming, exhausting, but I really encourage all of you to come, because it's in our backyard and it's just too good an opportunity to miss. So I just look forward to seeing you all there.
Jo, thank you. You are such a fantastic feminist funder and a great advocate, and thank you. I'm going to now, Ian, you're going to absolutely be cross with me because we've only got a very short amount of time, but in an environment where we do have So many challenges. Men still hold so much of the power. Male allies are even more important than ever, I think, with the rise of the manosphere. You've been a great advocate. Can you speak what it's like to be a bloke at this and what do you get out of that experience?
Yeah, well, I mean, the best thing I would invite us all to do is find those who will come and sort of, it's got to be a really explicit invitation to come and to lean in a way in which the men that organize around and in behind the leadership of women can make a difference. And I was part of that Vancouver experience that was shared, where the Equality Fund got up and where the Trudeau government made commitments to a feminist foreign policy. And it was a fundamental shift. And now we see, a Canadian government that's actually carrying on some of those principles in a difficult time. So there's a role for men to play, but it's really pull us in. And the second thing I would say, just to emphasize, it's sort of been said, but maybe I would say it even more so. It's Women Deliver more than any other event is a place to organize. And that starts now. It doesn't start just the day of. We're organizing with the community foundations, with community funds, Indigenous-led funds, women's funds. We're weaving and networking and preparing. And Women Delivers this amazing catalyst. By the time you get there, all the things that have been shared tonight get unlocked. But it creates a different set of conditions. You don't go and consume Women Deliver. You create it, you make it happen. And for those reasons, it's a space for men to show up in the right way. And for some of us to learn how to do that in ways that hasn't been, the normative context for most of our upbringings. So take the opportunity. Let's not be modest Australians. There's a time to sort of stand for things and to show up in a way and really showcase so much of the good that is happening here and more of which can come. So thanks for including me, Julie, and great to hear from everyone tonight.
Jen, thank you so much. The work that you're leading with Community Foundations Australia just is absolutely quite phenomenal, and hopefully we'll get to share that in another forum. We've got a lot of women's funds starting up across the country, thanks to actually the work that Ian's been leading. So thank you. And I know you've spoken personally about that transformative effect being involved in Women Deliver had for you, even though you saw yourself as a good person who believed in equality. It just completely changed your understanding. So thank you so much. Now, I have really just one moment left, I think, to thank all of our speakers and to let people know where to from here. And Ian's given us a really good call out there that don't wait 10 weeks. We've all got work to do. And the role that Australians Investing in Women is playing is to convene philanthropy. We have a Women Deliver philanthropy planning group that covers all of the peak bodies in philanthropy that are in climate and international giving. The She Gives campaign, we've got Community Foundations and Philanthropy Australia, the whole lot. And Julia, I think having you here is so powerful. The conversations that followed your presentation in Canberra at the Women's Leadership, at the Philanthropy Leadership event, and your call to fund the glue, if you could hear that echoing through the sector, I think you'd be very, very pleased with your impact. But I guess the call to action now is for people to really take up the opportunity, come along, register, be part of it. We really want people, funders, to consider sponsoring Pacifica women and First Nations women who would not otherwise be able to be part of this. And there's a link on our website. We'll send this in our follow-up comms that shows you exactly how you can do that. And it's just a simple thing that you can do that really builds that experience for women who would otherwise not get access to that kind of experience and learning. I guess in closing, what I would say is that our hope is that Women Deliver helps people understand that gender equality isn't just a discrete side issue that sits alongside education or health or climate or economic empowerment, but that it's actually part of the connective tissue that determines whether investments will succeed or fail, and that bringing that gender lens that you talked about, Julia, is so critical to getting the best bang for your buck in philanthropic investment. So thank you very much to everyone for joining us, to Kathy, to Virginia for that brilliant scene setting, to you, Julia, and to Viri and Maliha. Please reach out to us if you have any questions. If you're interested in funding Women Deliver as an organisation and a movement in this conference, we're happy to connect you in. But really just take time to be part of this and encourage others to come along. So thank you, good night, and we'll see you in April.